I'm Caden Love.
And I'm Seema Love, his wife.
And we are Love and Lore, taking the best of dark fantasy, light fantasy, and everything in between. And today we're going to be discussing a particular book that really got Seema deep into the fantasy genre.
When Caden tried to persuade me to read Name of the Wind, I resisted. I could see how thick it was, and all the covers for the Name of the Wind out there are so dark. So I would look at it, I would be like, it's going to be a dark and dreary journey if I go on this. And I resisted, but then I gave in. He said that it's written so beautifully, and I've read it, and it's one of my favorites now. Mm-hmm. I can't get over it. I read it almost a year ago, and still I think about it almost like every week.
And so those of you that don't know, Name of the Wind is written by Patrick Rothfuss. This book is very character-focused and very highly praised for its prose. It is very beautifully written, but it does have slower points, and there are bits of controversy that steer people away from reading it. Basically, what happens here is that we have Kvothe. He is much later in his life than most of the story, and he owns a tavern, and a man comes to him asking him to tell him his life story, essentially to pen it all down. The basis of the story is that he's going to tell them this story in 3 days, each book being 1 day. And one of the problems right off the bat with this is that we've been waiting for book 3 for a very long time, and we don't really need to get into when that will be because nobody even knows. But this book follows Kvothe as he goes through. He is a young traveler, orphan, kind of Harry Potter situation, but completely medieval setting. And when I pitch it to people, I tell them, think of Harry Potter in medieval era, but to go to his magic university, he has to be a bard. He has to earn money by playing music. And that is the basis of the book. And honestly, I didn't have very many problems with this book. I initially DNF'd it.
Really?
Only for the reason because I didn't like how it started. I didn't like to know that my character would be safe. I didn't like it being a let me tell you my life story. Which was a poor misjudgment. I went back and read it because so many people loved it and praised it. And just like Seema said, it is one of the most enjoyable books. The next book felt like an even better adventure. I listened to these on audiobook while on my morning runs, and I felt like I was out there adventuring in the world with Kvothe. So, one of the complaints is that people aren't big fans of the female characters in this series. Mm-hmm. So what was your take on that?
Well, actually, before I address that, I want to address something that you said before, that you DNF'd it because you said you knew that the main character was alive and well, so there was like no suspense for you or something.
Yeah.
To me, that is almost a huge plus for this book, because the worst thing an author can do to me as a reader is to kill my main character at the end of the book. I do not want that to happen. So knowing that Kvothe is all right and he's grown up, and that was like the best for me. I was like, at least I can know that all the hardships that he goes through, at least he survives them, because there are a lot of hardships for our main character in Name of the Wind. Okay, but coming back to your original question about female characters in the book. Yeah, I've actually heard a lot of things floating around out there saying that the books are sexist, and like all the women in the books exist just for Kvothe, and kind of everything revolves around him. And I don't understand these complaints, to be honest. Like, first of all, he is telling the story of his life, so it makes sense that he would focus only on people who would be important to his story. And that's understandable. The world being sexist, I do think that the world in which everything takes place is sexist, but the book itself is not. And let me explain what I mean. Even though the women in the books are, treated the way they are treated and kind of revolve around Kvothe, they all have their unique stories. They all have their own goals, aspirations, and they're not defined by him. Like, specifically, I feel like people don't like Dana because she's just like this mysterious love interest that appears, and they're like, frolicking around. But I do think that she has a really strong and really interesting character that is not related to Kvothe. Like, on the opposite, I feel like Kvothe has to run after her and seek out her because she's so busy living her life and surviving in that world. So honestly. I didn't think that the female characters were lacking in this book.
Well, and I do think you made a really good point that a lot of it is she is out there doing her own thing and he's chasing after her a lot. And so she definitely has her own side plot, which isn't always something that's really addressed in a lot of single character focused stories, especially with the main character telling his own story. But you do get a lot of interest. She's an interesting character. And I had the same thoughts. I mean, I'm not a woman, but I thought that you had some good points with that. And so some other characters, I think there are two, at least, other big female characters. First, we'll go to Ari. What did you think about Ari?
I love my whimsical characters. Like, anything that looks like it came out of Ghibli, I love. And she feels like the kind of characters that would be in the Ghibli movie, honestly. And I thought it was really cute how she brought up this tender side of Kvothe from him.
And this was definitely an interesting character, but Devi, what did you think about her?
Okay, actually, I think out of all the female characters, I think she was my favorite. Because she has such a strong personality in the book, and at the same time, she has a kind heart, so she's like not a bad person, even though she kind of puts Kvothe in tough situations. So again, it was really fun to see him interact with her.
And she was one that was, I agree with, had added a lot of tension and interesting things to it. Okay, and then a side note, we'll touch on probably the most controversial part in this series, that being Felurian. And Felurian appears in book 2, and honestly, I don't remember things getting too explicit, but this is why I wouldn't have younger audiences read these books just yet.
Okay, Felurian part was weird. I feel like the part with her isn't even important to the plot. It's just inserted there as like this little, what if we did a little of this in there, you know? But it was an interesting world-building moment when we get to know a little bit more about the magic in the world. So in that sense, it was kind of important to the plot. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed, of course, the prose. The way Patrick Rothfuss writes is always enjoyable. Even though I didn't, like I said, super love this part, I actually ended up doing a fan art for this little, so we can see my little fan art, because I do like romance and love, so I just wish it wasn't as spicy.
Yeah, and that would be my main complaint. I think that both these books are amazing. I do want to give book 2 a 10 out of 10, but I pull back to a 9.5 out of 10 because, and this is nothing against people that enjoy that stuff, but I do not want spice, really explicit things in my books, and I know that this wasn't too explicit compared to other things out there. I, like Seema, felt it was very unnecessary, and I can see where people might have issues with the author for putting those scenes in there.
So yeah, actually some critiques that I've heard floating around towards Name of the Wind is that it's wish fulfillment, and it's kind of like, what is it called? Mary Sue? Yeah, but like for Kvothe.
Oh yeah.
That he's kind of perfect. And I do agree. Kvothe is a pretty good in general, and all the girls that he meets are all pretty. So there is a little bit of that, but I read so much romantasy that I'm so used to it, and I'm desensitized to, like, you know, perfect characters.
And that's the thing, I've learned to kind of set aside things like that. The chosen one trope is one of my least favorites, because I think it often sets up that perfect, unbeatable character. We have people like Rey in The Force Awakens that, you know, Kylo Ren's been training for years and years, and she just comes in and beats him. I don't like the characters that are just smarter than everyone in the world just because they're so smart. I need a little more depth to that. I like more people like Sandan Glokta in the First Law series, where we get to see why he is smart and there's purpose behind that. And even though we don't have book 3, we have been given 2 novellas. The first being The Slow Regard of Silent Things, which Seema has not read yet.
Which I really want to, because I love Ari. I should read it.
And this follows Ari, and we'll get into my critique on that in a minute. And this one, the next one, The Narrow Road Between Desires, is more of a recent release, and the complaints surrounding this are a little sound. This was originally written as a short story called The Lightning Tree. Rothfuss later rewrote this and sold it as this book. And I do get that it was touched up a lot more, but a lot of people are complaining that he's not producing new content. You just need to recognize this. If you want to read it, this is an older story touched up and added upon. And this one follows Bast. This is the other companion to Kvothe that is in the present time.
And he's kind of like Fae kind of person.
Yeah. So this one does kind of touch on the magic, and it just follows Bast, a day in the life. And what did you think about this one?
I actually gave it 5 stars. I loved it. I love character-focused narratives, and this is very character-focused, and it has these warm, fuzzy moments, and I don't know, it just really reminded me of a lot of books that I read and loved, so I loved it.
And this is where we disagree. I gave this one 2.5, maybe 3 stars. I agree, it was very well written, and occasionally I do enjoy a slice of life, but I honestly felt like there was no purpose to this book, and it is the same thing with The Slower Art of Silent Things. People can describe this, even Rothfuss says that it is a book about Ari picking up things and putting them down. Both of these I feel like had no real purpose. I will admit that I really rely on plot. I need an interesting plot, and both of these have 0 plot. It is just about a character's life in the day, and you get to see a little more of that. If you really like slice of life, I recommend picking these up. But if you are more in the plot, I would say not really worth your time.
Maybe the reason why I liked one of them, and probably will like the other one, is because they're very whimsical compared to the rest of the book.
And I will say, though, both of these are very beautifully illustrated, so that is a perk. They're both shorter reads. So, The Kingkiller Chronicle, books 1 and 2, are very, very well written. I loved them, enjoyed them, and I think that they are one of the biggest and most profound fantasy books out there today. Definitely recommend trying them. And this is one of those, if you do not agree with the author and what he's done, just set it aside and try to enjoy the book for yourself. And I think that you might like it.
Yes, and now I want to address it to all of my romantasy girls. I think every romantasy girl should give this a try if she can digest long, hard fantasy, because I know that some people start reading, for example, Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, and they can't digest it because it's too much world building and it's too big. And if you can digest these kind of things, you will love this. I think anyone will love this.
Well, thank you for watching, and let us know. Have you read Name of the Wind? Do you like it? And are you waiting with us for Doors of Stone?
Yes. I have faith. You know, some people say, like, oh, we're never going to get it. But, you know, I feel that it will be a crime not to finish something like this. So I think he will put himself together at some point, and he will do it, and he'll give us the 3rd book. So let's wait together, and thank you for watching.